Hello, can you hear me? Okay, so I was just making a video, and it kind of got cut off near the end, and I had a certain point I wanted to make. But before I go into that, let me just mention that I'm using a fucking studio mic outside, so I wonder if there's going to be wind noise. But anyways, um, so the point I was making is the numbers paradox. And so there's however many gang stalkers there are, there's more gang stalkers near you. So just hypothetically, I'm guessing here, if 1 out of 10 people of the entire population are gang stalkers, which is actually the number that I would guess, around you, 9 out of 10 people are gang stalkers. And so the Milgram experiment shows this, that most people would become basically Nazis. But also, the Milgram experiment didn't have an opt-out button. So in the Milgram experiment, had the conductors of the experiment said you could push this button at any time and you can stop torturing this innocent person to death. If they would have said that instead of saying, nope, the experiment requires you to keep torturing this person to death. And, 60% of people would say, yeah, okay, I'll torture them to death. In some places like Munich, more like 80%. And when a badge tells you to do something like that, it's like 90%. I can't really cite the 90% part, but I heard that from Osho about the 80% in Munich, up to 90% with a badge. If someone with the experiment, someone who's doing the experiment has a badge, it's like 90% compliance. I don't know where that came from. But anyways, that's not really the point of this. The point I'm trying to make is, and this is my opinion here, the gang stalkers have to have a certain number of gang stalkers or else it won't work. And that number can't be too high, because the gang stalkers are also, as much as we hate them and condemn them, the gang stalkers also have human trafficking done on them, if that makes sense. They're raised in it. They can't, if they quit, I don't think they can really quit. I think by they can't talk about it. There's no one who says, I used to be a gang stalker and it sucked, and here's everything that we did. You might have you might hear about that sometimes, but you'll wonder if it's actually real, or you'll hear about it and that person will end up dead or something. And so, if supposing that everyone was a gang stalker, supposing like 90% of the population were gang stalkers, that would introduce human rights for the gang stalkers, because gang stalking is top down. It's a top-down authoritarian regime where the gang stalkers are also slaves. So if the gang stalkers were the majority of people, the gang stalkers could then organize and have unions within the gang stalking. They can make human rights gang stalking. Like, hey, are you a gang stalker? Are you feeling pressured into continuing but you want to quit? Well, here we have a gang stalking lawyer that will help you get the human rights so that you can quit and that you could talk about it. Are you a gang stalker and you've been wrongly treated? They withdrew some money from your account, or they did something bad to you because you messed up on the job and you tried to contest it, but they didn't listen. Well, now we have gang stalking human rights lawyers. And if everyone is a gang stalker, then they wouldn't have to keep it secret. So they have to keep the normies in the majority so that the normies could say, oh, that doesn't exist. That's crazy. You're claiming you're a gang stalker? No, that's like claiming you're a TI. That's equally insane. No one would ever believe you that you're a gang stalker, because gang stalking doesn't exist. You have to keep gang stalking in the minority, where the majority of people don't know anything about it, so that the gang stalkers can also be controlled via the mechanism of it's so egregious that no one would believe you anyways. Like the Nazi camps, they have to be kept out of sight where no one can see it. Like it has to be kept secret where no one can see it. And to keep it secret, you have to have only a small percentage, less than half of the population, who are doing it. And so that explains the gang stalker paradox, of why is everyone around you a gang stalker? 90% of the people are around you and they're gang stalkers. They're, your family, your friends, everyone turns, everyone becomes a gang stalker. Just like the Milgram experiment says. Well, if that's true, why don't they just recruit everyone in the whole world to be a gang stalker? Because then there would be power within numbers for them to organize within themselves to have an opt-out button. The secrecy is what prevents the opt-out button. If there's too many people, they wouldn't have to keep it secret anymore. The average proletariat, the average fucking powerless gang stalker would somehow become too powerful, and they'd be able to unionize, and they'd be able to create an opt-out button that we don't want this, and it wouldn't work anymore. So I think for gang stalking to work, there's a sweet spot of you have to have not too little gang stalkers and not too much gang stalkers, and as long as you have that, then it can work. And maybe someday they'll change the structure of society so that you couldn't rebel, so it's like they only need a certain amount of gang stalkers to enslave everybody, maybe, and then by that time you really couldn't fight back. Like by then, literally everyone's guns are taken and everyone's mode of transportation is taken, and ultimately everyone's food. You're completely dependent on the government for food, and you can't. There's no ability to protest at all, and so I actually really value this, like fucking this, like. I used to live in a smoke-infested house before we had a discussion that now there's clean air in the house. And let me tell you, if you've never had to breathe in smoke 24/7 in your own house as a non-smoker and you hate it, and you don't even know what the value of clean air is, you probably you haven't woken up today and said, I have smoke-free air. Oh my God, it's amazing. You probably actually couldn't even imagine that unless you've had that taken away from you. You actually couldn't imagine how valuable it is. And so in some kind of sense like that, I can kind of guess, or I can kind of infer how good it is, even though I haven't had my ability to talk taken away. I can kind of understand how good it is that I have the ability to say these things. Like that I can just talk to an audience right now, that I can say that the government are gang stalkers, that I can say that and someone's not going to haul me off into a dungeon tonight, that I can say that. It's CSIS, the Freemasons, the police, the judges, the lawyers, the whole network, the whole cabal. That's who the cabal is. The MI6, the CIA, the intelligence agencies, the Neighborhood Watch. The fact that I'm allowed to say that, that's fucking valuable, I appreciate that. And the fact that I could just talk to people too. There's a lot of people who I really like on these YouTube channels, and that means a lot to me too. Because when I go to the store and there's all these people who are doing these hand signals at me, I feel like I have the people who I like on YouTube who are watching, I feel like I have you guys supporting me. Like you guys are like, don't worry about what that guy did. That guy's a jerk. And I'm like, yeah, I know. Isn't he such a jerk? I'm glad I have you to bounce this off of, so I don't feel completely alone. And so at the beginning, I actually felt like a real freak walking around with a camera in public. And now I don't. Now I'm like, no, this is actually literally my support group. I actually literally have a fucking mobile support group with me. So, this is the thing that makes me feel normal, actually, going out in public. So anyways, hope you enjoy the video, and gang stalker numbers paradox explained. Oh yeah, okay. I feel like this is gonna fall over, but at least it's on. Good morning, everyone. Okay, good morning. I have a new hat. No, it's cool. I don't need a compliment. I know you're not going to compliment it. No, it's cool. I know no one's going to say nice new hat. No, don't worry. I'm fine. Hey, it's fine. I'm over here all by myself. It's cool. She gave me $2 off. No big deal. I biked there all the way with my... And I know you don't care, but let me just show you something. Okay, I know Remember, I just woke up, so I'm full of juice right now. Okay, so this is a wind muff. These work remarkably well. There's one here, there's one here. You put this on your microphone, and you'd expect that you'd have no wind. But you actually do have wind with this one. But with this one, you don't. It's just the build of the microphone, I guess. And there's this guy I follow on YouTube who makes crazy e-bikes. His e-bikes go like 60 miles an hour, and he does like regular mountain bike frame. Like, it's nuts. And his video style is very straight to the point. The first shot is the box of the battery or something, and he says first thing we gotta do is take out the motor of the stock bike, take out the controller of the stock bike, and here we have the new stock, the new upgraded controller and motor and brakes. And his videos are about 10 minutes long, and it does like the entire e-bike build. Kind of reminds me of, oh, and check this out. This is a popcorn maker. It's like made out of silicone. You can make popcorn in here. And remember, vegan butter is one of those things that tastes exactly like the real thing. And it's cheap. It's sometimes $1.99 for a whole brick of butter, like a pound of it. So I can make fucking vegan popcorn. Really good. I had a weird dream. Been kind of analyzing my dream. Not exactly sure if it meant anything. Apparently a lot of dreams mean something. I don't mean in the horoscope sense, like, you know, you dream of a bird and it means that you're going to win the lottery or something. But some people say, and this is out of my league, so I don't know. Some people say that there's a certain layer of your dreams that are just nonsense, just meaningless. And another layer of your dreams is clairvoyant. It can tell you what your future beholds, or something to that effect. I can't really remember, but I don't really know about that. Like, whether or not you can predict the future. I tend to think no. Like, people like Nostradamus, they just say things that are completely vague, and you can find the meaning anywhere. But whether or not I had psychological issues, well, the dream was I was talking on the phone to a gang stalker. And I was saying, you motherfucker, you fucking this, you fucking that. And they were ignoring me. They were just listening silently. And then I said, you can't talk, can you? I said, so I'll ask you a question that they'll allow you to answer. And I forget what the question was, but they didn't even answer that. And it got me all upset. And then a dog walked by, a woman, two women walking a dog. And the dog was 7 feet tall. And so I said, oh, wow, you know, on the phone, I said, a dog just went by, it was like 7 feet tall. And the gang stalker said, oh, wow, something like that, like genuinely. And so I went to chase them. And I said to the woman, one of the women walking the dog, how tall is your dog? And she said, it's 15 feet tall. And so I said kind of incredulously on the phone, they said it's 15 feet tall. And then they were telling me the dog has hip issues. And, you know, they were showing me how they had some special leash for it to help its hips. I guess, like, they wrapped the leash around its hips. And then when I woke up, I thought, 15 feet tall? That dog was only 7 feet tall. And then I realized, well, what about when the dog stands up on its back legs? It'd probably be 15 feet tall then. Kind of made sense. And I was thinking, even in the dream, not really when I was woken up, but in the dream I was thinking, isn't that odd that the gang stalker suddenly said, oh, or some kind of, oh wow, to the very candid comment, the unexpected comment of, that, oh, like, when I wasn't condemning them, they suddenly said something. And I'm not exactly sure if this dream was just nonsense. But our tenant just said hello to me when I went outside to let Richard out. Richard attacked my feet earlier. He made me bleed. That was kind of painful. I was really angry, and I wanted to kick him, actually. No, I didn't. I didn't want to kick him. I wouldn't kick him, even when I'm angry. I wouldn't. I wouldn't have the desire to kick him, but I wanted to kind of shove him with my foot, something kind of, you know, to show him. And instead, I just went to clean the wound. I was bloody. Like, it was. He really got me. You could hear him, and you could hear his nails scratching my foot. It was fucking bloody. And so it was stinging, and so I washed it with soap and put on a sock. It felt better. And then I went downstairs, and he attacks us because he wants food or he wants out. He's within his rights to do that, because we have to keep him inside, because the gang stalker basically threatened to call the Humane Society. So he's outside right now in his tent, but what he'd like is to be outside without his tent. And we did train him to go outside without the tent, but just to not walk away. But he doesn't really like that. Something's changed about him since he's been an indoor cat. He basically got fat and he started attacking us. So, whenever he wants food, he's an emotional eater. He's bored. He's inside all the time. So therefore he has to eat all the time, and then when he doesn't get enough food, he'll start attacking our feet, or he'll attack the other cat, which he never did that before he was turned into an indoor cat. And it's not our fault that we have to keep him inside, because seemingly he'd go to the Humane Society otherwise. And you could say, from his perspective, it is our fault, because he would say, so what? Take me to the Humane Society, put me down, sell me to some other family. Now, some other family might also keep him inside. You never quite know. I did look at rehoming him. I did try to find a new home for him. I probably would do that if there was somewhere I knew he could go outside. So should I take the chance of letting him outside and then he gets rehomed somewhere forcibly, or he just, I don't know. The people who were going to call the Humane Society on him, they said that they were afraid he was going to attack their dogs. Now that comes from a woman who said to me, on behalf of a gang stalker, I hope that doesn't sound complicated. There's a gang stalker who remained anonymous, who told another gang stalker that they were going to call the Humane Society on Todd because she was afraid that Todd was going to attack her dogs, and she lives nearby. And have I seen Todd interact with other animals? Yeah, he's pretty cool. If another animal gets feisty with him, he doesn't back down, but he also doesn't provoke. For example, I saw a cat who was going "Row, row," like a race car, back up, charging at Todd and then stopping. And Todd was just laying there. And Todd was watching him. This cat was kind of on the border of our property, and it had an Apple AirTag on its collar. And strangely enough, there was a gang-stalking woman sitting right outside of our house, parked, like, with her car running, right outside where this cat was in our yard. And I brought some treats out for the cat. I thought the cat was homeless. I kind of checked the tightness of its collar. Its collar seemed a little bit tight, but then I could get my finger under it, like one finger, so it didn't seem too tight. And this cat was very aggressive towards Todd. Todd wasn't doing anything to the cat. Todd was just like laying there, maybe 5 feet away from the cat. Todd was completely unaffected. It was pretty cool to see, actually. And then we had this. I had an ex-girlfriend who asked me to babysit her cat while she went on vacation with her new boyfriend after she cheated on me and we broke up. Could you imagine that? Who I think she was gang-stalking by the end. She asked me one time, she said, "Do you think I'm a bad person?" And I was like, "No." And then in hindsight, I was like, "I think you're asking me that because you are somehow gang-stalking me." I don't know, but she went on vacation to Jamaica with her new boyfriend. And she used to always hate when I would smoke weed. And then there was a picture of her on vacation with her boyfriend, and she was smoking. Looked like fresh weed, which she can't even smoke. I don't really know. She was smoking weed, which was like, wasn't really like her at all. I think she smoked weed like once while we were together, and she greened out. She thought she was gonna die, and she was worried that her family was gonna blame me, which they would have. She was really freaked out. But I think that may have been weird weed, because I one time had weed when I thought it had been laced with something. I had been smoking quite a lot of weed. I got high, like probably thousands of times. And there was one time where I got high, and it felt very different. I think it was probably my first or second year of smoking weed. So I still wasn't really that much a veteran of it, but I, and this is what came to mind. I don't even know what PCP looks like. I've never done, but I was like, is this PCP or something? Is there something really heavy, really, really, really heavy in this? There's something. This is like fucking crazy weed. Like this is like I just got punched in the head. Like this is really fucking weird. And I've done salvia. In terms of disassociatives, nothing comes close to salvia. But with salvia, you keep your contrast, you keep your sharpness. You go to a very strange world in salvia that's extremely disassociated from this world. For example, you basically have a dream, a very vivid dream. And while you're awake, you also have very strange ideas and visions. For example, I thought that I was in a mattress warehouse. I was in the basement with my mattress, and I thought I was in a warehouse that sells mattresses, and that the warehouse was so big that it spanned the entire world, and that I could just walk forever, and it would just be endless mattresses. Infinity Mattresses universe. And I was laughing so hard that this is so funny. Could you imagine? Just you're in a world with mattresses. And another time, I smoked enough that I passed out. I spilled my juice all over my table. I could have easily spilled it on my laptop. And I thought I was under a cargo crate of a ship. I only had like a couple inches of room above me. And I thought, they don't know I'm under here. This could kill me at any time. I have to escape. It was very scary. I was completely passed out at that point. And then another time I was awake on it, but I started laughing. I was in the basement, and I was sitting against the wall. So there would have been dirt behind the wall. And I started laughing that there was some presence behind the wall that had always been there, and yet it had remained unavailable to me or disguised. I laughed that, oh my God, you are here, as if there was an entity that had been all of a sudden revealing itself to me and had been hiding the whole time. And I thought, oh, you are here. You're right behind me. That's so funny. That's so funny. You're always right here. You're right here with me. That's, like you're disguised. Whatever, you're in You're in everything. That's how you disguise yourself. That's why it's so funny, because you're in everything. It's not like there's a certain space dedicated to you. It's that you're right here, but you're inside of everything. You're inside the air, like you're inside all of life, and you're there. There's something you're watching. It was salvia was probably the best drug, actually, but salvia is scary too. It's probably the scariest. In a way, in a way. I'd probably be more scared to do weed, actually. But, I smoked salvia while having sex once, and that didn't go so well. That was with my ex who cheated on me, and I started talking to someone who wasn't there. And she got kind of freaked out, and but everything else went well. And so she gave us her cat, Princess. Her cat's name was Princess. And so look at this guy walking out in front of our house. There's a gang stalker. He just walks in front of our house, then he turns around, goes to the end of our driveway with his little Nazi baby. Poor baby, poor people. He's like, I'm going to set up a hidden camera. I have hidden cameras set up in my baby's room for their entire life. By the time they are cognizant of what's happening, they'll already be demoralized completely. Fucking people. Well, anyways, so Penelope was very, very nice and never really had any problems with Todd. Todd was very respectful to Penelope. Princess Penelope was her cat's name. Or Pee-Pee. And so I knew that Todd would be nice to this cat when I saw this cat. Then there was my grandma's dog, who is kind of invasive. He kind of barks at you. He kind of gets in your face. And people were worried that Todd was going to attack that dog. But, so if the dog is not... You know how they say if an owner is fucked up, the dog is fucked up? If the dog is not fucked up, I couldn't see Todd attacking it. And the problem was, outdoors, Todd would go wherever he wants, including, apparently, the yard of the biatch down the street who threatened to call the Humane Society because she's worried about her dogs getting attacked. Her little yappy dogs, those fucking... Speaking of, I saw this YouTube short, and it said when a cat meows like this, when a cat meows like that, it means come here in cat language. And there was a whole bunch of comments on the video, and it was a compilation video of a bunch of people, probably like 10 people at least, all doing that cat call to their cats for the first time, and the cat comes on command. And so my ex-girlfriend, actually, speaking of her, she used to have this call for Todd that would go pss, 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 pss. And whenever we would do that call, he would come. And I don't know if she found it or if she discovered it, but years later I could call him and he wouldn't come. But as soon as I'd go pss, 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 then he would immediately come. And it kind of depressed me, like, oh great, I thought I was his favorite person, and I have to imitate the cheating ex-gangstalker girlfriend for him to. And so I tried this new calling. It took me 3 times, and he came. The first time he kind of perked up, and then I could tell he was intently looking at me. And I read the comments, and lots of people were saying, I just did this and I looked like a fool in front of my husband or something. But there was lots of comments saying, yeah, it worked. And so it worked for me. So anyways, Richard gets fat, and now he's the attack cat. making me bleed. Bloodying my foot. And so you could say that is our fault. Yeah, you know, because we are the ones who are keeping him in. But, you know, you could also say it's not our fault. You could also say it's the temperament of the woman down the street. And so she says to this other gang stalker, I'm going to call this city on that cat. And then the other gang stalker reports to us that same message. And she's the one who, when I was driving by her on my bike, she said, her name is Ursula, just so you know. For anyone local watching, she lives down the street. And her son is a gang stalker as well. And she's a fat, disgusting old whore. Disgusting old, she's so fat that you'd think you can't be that fat and that old at the same time. Just a nasty, dark sunglasses wearing woman. I think she wears the same sunglasses as her son. And she says, "We're gonna get you," as I'm driving by on my bike. Totally creepy. Now, coming from someone like that, if that's the source, someone is like threatening, "We're gonna get you," and that person also says, "Oh, and by the way, your cat is an attack cat, so it has to go to the Humane Society." Would you believe that woman? Now you might say, "Well, look, see, he attacked your feet." Yeah, but at what cost? You know, my cat's basically being gang stalked. And so he's reacting. That's called reactive abuse. And so there was this thing in the news the other day where there was this guy in Canada and he attacked some people. He drove his truck into some people and he killed some people. And that guy was probably gang stalked. Let's see, Richard over here. The guy was probably gang stalked. And let's see, where do I want to sit over here? Maybe I'll do a long view. The guy was, there's probably the police are probably celebrating at this point. That, here's some old gang stalkers. I don't know if you could really see them. Let's see. Okay, I'll get the comfortable chair. So the police are getting a huge bonus right now because who benefits when someone does a mass killing? Well, the police. Police benefit from that. Oh, maybe the camera shouldn't be in the sun. Maybe that's not good. Well, it doesn't seem too hot out. Oh, and look at our garden. I did plant my watermelon seeds. Here's the gang stalkers. Whoa, okay. Yeah, so the police basically get a bonus when someone does a mass killing. This guy, according to the YouTube comments, he had prior arrests. And people in the comments were saying, look, someone of fighting age, an immigrant of fighting age, just did a shooting. Oh, thanks, Trudeau. And you could hear the gang stalking logic. It's so stupid. It's like, okay, we're going to terrorize people, we're going to drug them, and, you know, there's a reason why people who are gang stalked need drugs. Okay, so they do drug us. That's that's something a lot of TIs say, and that seems pretty consistent. I mean, I don't know how they could break in while you're sleeping without drugging you. I'm like very sure they drug us, but they drug us in another way too. That's not so obvious. The other way that they drug us is when we're having these reactions, like being stressed out. That's like such a constant dopamine withdrawal, or like cortisol spike. I've heard of this study or some kind of case report where when people were extremely abused in certain situations, when they had shell shock, they couldn't even like formulate a sentence. Like if you've ever seen someone who has shell shock, it looks like they have Parkinson's. It looks like they have like Tourette's and Parkinson's, and they're like, and and they're trying to say I was going to the store, and they just like and they can't get over that word. And so there's like there's a certain effect that happens on the brain when you're just cortisol overloaded over and over, like infinity times, that even if you're not being drugged, which you are being drugged, but even just hypothetically, if you're not being drugged, by that method of stressing someone else to a literal torturous, cruel and inhuman, cruel and unusual torture, covert torture kind of thing, that changes the brain chemistry so that you're essentially drugged. And so you have this guy, and he goes to he drives his truck to a Filipino parade, and he runs out, he kills Filipino people. And so people are like, this guy should have been taken care of. He has multiple arrests. We need the police now. The police are too lenient. We should have got rid of this guy a long time ago. And you could hear the gangstalker logic, which would be something to the effect of, well, really, we should have the right to just shoot them in public, because look what they do. But the, the the nominal gangstalker logic is not really the same thing. It's kind of like when a woman goes on a date with a guy and she doesn't like him, but she only realizes she doesn't like him after they have dinner, after he buys dinner. Then she's like, you know what? Now that I have a full stomach, I think I can think clearly now. And I just realize all of a sudden that I don't like him. I couldn't see it before, I just I couldn't imagine what I was thinking. I was just so hungry, I just couldn't think. But now that he's paid for dinner, now I can think clearly, and now I know that I'm never going to see him again. So, so it's like the nominal logic is not the same as the base logic, and the base logic behind gang stalking is the judges and the lawyers and the police are going to human traffic people, drug them, terrorize them into committing acts of terrorism. And they can make it specific too. Like having it a race thing is really good for their narratives, because then they could say, "Oh, look, it's national security. It's a race war. Look, it's an immigrant from somewhere else. So we have to have these national security buffers that bypass due process. It's an immigrant who did it. So let's just call it national security, so we don't have to have due process." Or, it's really good for them to have some kind of division, like if it's a race thing, and they could do that sort of thing. Like they could have a whole bunch of Filipinos stalk somebody just to try to get someone to attack a certain race. Like how detail oriented they are. They could they could easily have an excess of Filipino stalkers. And so their base logic is, let's get people to do the thing that makes us needed. So we can get more people to do the thing that makes us needed. Like, let's get people to commit acts of terrorism so that everyone thinks that we're the good guys and that it justifies our existence where there otherwise wouldn't be. Because if you think about it, there's no species that goes to war with itself. I don't think that these events are organic. I think if these events weren't created, they wouldn't happen. I think if it wasn't for the police, there wouldn't actually be crimes. And so they say, we're going to create terrorism, and then the point of that is going to be so that we still exist and that we still have power in the eyes of the normies. And thank God when it works. When there's some guy who drives his truck into the parade, the police are all cheering. They're going, "Its mission succeeded. We got another one." That's what they say. The lawyers, the judges. And then the people who are normies, like the people who aren't being gang stalked and they don't know what gang stalking is, in a certain way, you could make the argument that they're the most responsible for all of this. Because the gang stalkers can't even condemn gang stalking in their own house. They can't complain about it, they can't talk about it. They're under strict be silent or die requirements. And now you could argue they should just bite the bullet and talk about it anyways. And the TIs can't really talk about it because we're shadow banned. We can talk about it, but we can't really get that much of a reach. And it's the normal people in a certain way. The normal people are the most responsible for this. And what their crime is they just go around like everything's normal. They're just like acting like nothing's wrong. And they should be more aware. They should have a precedent that there are so many obvious human atrocities, human rights violations, human atrocities, war crimes going on that are happening somewhere else, that are done at the behest of our own governments. That should set the precedent in their mind that their own governments are also that sick domestically as well, and that it's hidden in plain sight. Their radar should be looking to pick up on how is it being done here as well, because these same sickos, they're doing this horrible shit to other people in other countries. So what are they doing here? They should have those kind of radars set, and they should have more sympathy and trust in the so-called crazy people like us who are talking about what's happening. They should be searching us out. They should be saying, "Oh, look, I just found someone who's saying what our government is doing and it's terrible, and I had a feeling that our government was doing something terrible because if they're doing it over there, they're doing it over here too." You know, it's that same logic the normal person will say about that guy who drove the parade truck. He'll say, "Oh, look, that guy had multiple arrests and he still went free. And he had the option to go hurt people. It shouldn't have been allowed. Thanks, Trudeau government." But that same person won't look at the government who commits war crimes all around the world and say, "Look, a repeat offender government. Well, I guess they're a dangerous person to me too, to the society." They won't say that. They'll say, "Well, when it's the government, it's different. When the government commits crimes, they have identity politics, so they're somehow immune, or somehow they'll only hurt those other people with different skin color or different socioeconomic status than us, but they wouldn't hurt us." No. So it's the complacency and the stupidity of normal people gets me fucking zanked, okay? It gets me fucking spiced up sometimes. You know, I fucking good riddance to normal people. Let me just say it that way. Good riddance. And so anyways, what I did with Todd when he after he attacked me. I said, "Sire, can I walk here? May I walk in your space, sire?" And he kind of let me. He meowed, and then he followed me. I could tell he was going to attack me. So I sat down. I petted him a bit, and he's not happy. I'm looking at him right now. He's not happy. And then we have gang stalkers surrounding me on both sides. To the left of me, to the right of me, there are gang stalkers. And these are the people who are responsible for mass shootings. That's really their job. And could you imagine explaining it without using double speak? Okay, so mass shootings are bad, okay? When people hurt themselves and others, that's actually bad. So we're going to get you to drug those people, to poison them, and to assault them a whole bunch of times. And we're just going to keep doing it until they do the mass shooting or until they hurt themselves or someone else. We're just going to keep provoking them, drugging them, threatening them, and terrorizing them. And eventually, some of them, a certain percentage of them, are going to do the thing that we don't want them to do, which is like to hurt someone. So that's your job. We're going to get you to make them do the thing that we don't want them to do so that we can protect people from themselves. Because if we didn't protect them, something bad might happen to them. And I was thinking about how they could also say, and we worship God, but, we actually worship the devil. I mean, we just call the devil God. And you might be thinking that we're going to provoke these people into committing some mass homicide. And maybe there's a Freemason in the parade who gets killed. Okay, maybe there's an off-duty cop who gets killed, or a lawyer or a judge. And you might be thinking, what if they kill one of us? What if you're the one who gets killed? But the devil has your back, bro. Because when you sell your soul on earth, think about what you get. You get pussy, you get money, you get prestige, you get power, you get fame, you get safety, you get security, you get drugs, you get pretty much anything you could want just for giving your soul over to the devil. So if you're one of the quote unquote unlucky few who gets kind of, you're the egg that gets broken by making the omelet, when you go to hell, you think the devil's not going to reward you? The devil was the first one to go against God. And so you're going against God too. When you go to hell, the devil's going to have your back. The devil's going to give you all the things that you couldn't even talk about on YouTube, or else YouTube would remove you. Any pleasure you could think of, the devil's going to give you that once you get to hell. So even if you die, it's no big deal, And you're basically a soldier at this point. Like, you're a Freemason. You want to do the good deed of getting other people to do mass homicide for you by human trafficking them. You want to human traffic people to do mass homicide so that you can get away with it. Okay, you want to drug people and torture them into a state of psychosis for them to do mass murder so that you have job security, so that you could take away people's rights, so that you could create a surveillance state. You're basically a soldier, and you might end up getting hit by a truck at a parade. And that's a good thing. You wouldn't even see it coming, and then you'd go straight to hell where you'd have even more luxuries. So, don't be a big crybaby over it. The devil has your back, bro. And to a large extent, there's also the paradox of the numbers. 90% of gang stalkers are the people who live around you, if that makes sense. Or, in other words, how many people do you think are gang stalkers? Okay, whatever number you have. Like, what percentage of the entire Earth population are gang stalkers? Now, contrast that to how many of the people around you are gang stalkers. You'd probably think that more people around you are gang stalkers. because they all convert. So they don't just convert every single person into a gang stalker, but they convert every single person near the gang stalker. Like on our street, probably like half or more of the houses are gang stalkers. Certainly, like, most of the houses, like the neighbors,